Hello, my name's Ab Sesay, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I see photographers making. And the first one is the thought process that goes into upgrading light stands. But don't worry, I'm going to talk about color, and I'm going to talk about some lighting mistakes I see people make often as well. So first, let's talk about light stands. When we start upgrading from a simple kit stand like this, which is most likely made of aluminum, the next thing we think about is we need to upgrade to a C stand. I think that what you mean is you need to upgrade to a steel stand, because the goal is ultimately you want to hang larger light fixtures, you want to put things like booms and things like that, and you want them to be stable and safe, and you want something that rolls. Now, I know there are C stands out there with wheels. It raises their center of gravity, and I wouldn't recommend them when it comes to using larger light fixtures, just due to the fact that I feel as if though it makes them a little bit more tippy. But hey, go with what you know. If you're comfortable using C-stands with wheels, hey, I'm gonna leave that one up to you. They are out there, and I get it. C-stands are great when you have to work in the tight spaces, and C-stands are ultimately the best option when you need to take a stand and put it next to another stand. Due to their leg design, it's easy for me to just simply tuck in this C-stand right next to another light, and the huge benefit of that is if I need to introduce things like light control elements, like flags or nets, in order to put in front of a light, a C-stand is great at not having a huge footprint on set, so I can sneak in elements like these. So ultimately, when you think about making that next light stand purchase, think about going from aluminum to steel so that you can end up supporting more weight and having a stand that's ultimately a little bit more stable, especially when you want to move into using larger light modifiers. Now, you may not know this, but a stand like this, which I'm going to recommend below, holds more weight than a C-stand, goes lower than a C-stand, goes higher than a C-stand, and pretty much weighs exactly the same, if not a little bit less. That's why I would recommend it as the next light stand purchase you make if your goal is to move into larger lighting modifiers so you have a stand that's a little bit more stable. But now there's a total deal breaker, and that comes if you do not have the weight of a grip arm going in the right direction. Now, sometimes people guess and they get a little unsure whether they have it going in the right direction, and they just wrench down on one side to see if that's the side it should go on. And if you already have it tight, you could be fooled. But let me tell you how I do it. If the handle is facing away from you, the weight should go to the left-hand side. If the handle is facing towards you, then the weight should go to the right-hand side. Don't mess this one up, because this is a non-negotiable. If the weight is on the wrong hand side, the stand could self-loosen, and this could come down and hit someone. Punching out to this wide shot, do you see what's the difference between this shot and the last shot? If you look, now I have a sandbag on our C-stand. A huge mistake I see people make is they don't put the sandbag on the right leg, and they don't have the weight going out over the right leg. Now with a C-stand, you always want to make sure the weight is distributed over the longest leg, and you always want to make sure that you have a sandbag on the longest leg as well. This way, the stand is the most stable, and there's less of a chance of it tipping over. Sometimes I see people put a sandbag on a light stand and the sandbag is touching the floor. If you do this, the floor is taking some of the weight, making everything a lot less stable. If you are in an instance where you find the sandbag is too big, you put it around the base of the stand like so. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it touching the ground. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves is about positioning your light and not finding the sweet spot. So here I have a parabolic reflector from Godox, and I'm going to show the difference when I point it and I have the sweet spot on the model's face and what happens when the sweet spot falls a little bit lower. How do I personally go about finding the sweet spot? I use a light meter to do it, simply so I can tell how the light is falling off. I'll run through it, explain how I do it, and show the difference when you have the light dialed into the sweet spot and when you don't. Okay, so now we're gonna look at how we use a light meter to find the sweet spot of our light. Now, I've cheated the angle of this light down just a little bit. I do think that if I was looking at this by eye, I would do a slightly better job, but I wanna show you the fact that sometimes you cannot be in the sweet spot of the light. You can still get pictures that you think are okay, but if you dialed in the sweet spot of the light, you'd find out the pictures would be just a little bit better, or you'd be working with the light that you intended to do. And I feel like lighting should always be something that's very intentional. First thing I'm gonna do is start her ahead taking a light meter reading. And I'll say I have 8.06. Now I'm gonna come to her chin. And I have 8.09. Now I'm gonna come down to her chest. And I see that now I have 11.1 when I come to metering her chest. So this is showing me that the light is not falling off as it's going down, it's actually getting brighter. and I'm possibly not in the sweet spot of the light. So I'm gonna take a picture so we see what this looks like. Now, as you look at our first photograph, some people may think, hey, that looks okay. I can just make some slight adjustments in capture one, but let's see what happens when we get her dialed into the sweet spot of the light. 1, 2, 3, 4 rotations here. Now I'm gonna come back around and get another set of meter readings. Now I see I have 11.9 on her forehead. I have 11.9 towards her chin, so the face is lit nice and evenly. And the light is 11.2 at her chest, so it's falling off as it's going down. Now I'm gonna take another photograph. Now when we come over looking, now that we got her in the sweet spot of the light, you can see there's a huge difference in terms of lighting. So now I'm gonna come back over, and I like to look above her head, at her forehead, at her chin, and at her chest. And again, this makes sure that the sweet spot isn't flying up above her head somewhere, but it's exactly where I want it so I can take advantage of the intention of the light shaper that I'm using. And let's say if I had another person come in to this same lighting that was taller or shorter, I would use the light meter again to find out where that sweet spot is, especially when you're using reflectors like a parabolic reflector or something that's more spotty. I want to make sure that spot is hitting in the right area. Now, yes, you could always do something creative. You could feather a light shaper. I'm not saying you have to stay in the sweet spot, but if that's what you're intending to do, and oftentimes if you're using like a parabolic reflector or something very focused, you want to understand and know where the sweet spot of this light shaper is, because often that's where you can get the best results in terms of what you're going for whatever look it is. Another mistake I see a lot of photographers make is not using a safety cable. Sometimes you may ask yourself, well, I don't know where to tie the safety cable off to. Here's a little trick. Get a super clamp. Attach your safety cable to the super clamp. Tie off any of your lights that you have boomed out so that everybody feels a little bit more comfortable on your set. So another mistake I see people make on set is not using a color checker. This is critically important. I try to get it in either before my frame or after. And yes, there are times where I cannot get a color checker in there, but let me hand it to our model and show you what it does for us. If you can hold that. Perfect. Beautiful. So here now I come over to the computer, and to the eye this looks okay, but when I go to the 18% gray here, you can see this really warm the picture up. Now, it can be very easy to dial in the proper color temperature, but I do find when it comes to dialing in like the green and the magenta, it's very, very helpful for me to have a color checker and start with a very neutral image if I want to start doing any color corrections from here. I don't know if I can call this next one a mistake or a myth, and that is when you feather your light, it actually gets softer. When you feather a light, it actually gets harder because you're making the light source smaller relative to the subject. So now I'm going to run through the demo of showing you that feathering your light is actually a myth if you think it gets softer. And you'll see I have some black flags set up, so the light can't bounce around the room as much, but one of the things I can't block out is the ceiling. So there's still a lot of light just bouncing around here, but let's see what the results look like. So I would say this is an unfeathered position here, as I have the light pointed directly towards her. And since I pre-metered this, I know that I need to be at power about 7.6. So now I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna take a photograph. And we see this first photograph, I have this nice soft shadow on her right-hand side. Now I'm gonna feather the light. And now that the light is feathered, I'm gonna go to power 10 on our light. So there's about a 2.5 stop difference. And now when you look at this shadow on the right-hand side, you're gonna see that the light ultimately became much harder. So you see how soft the shadow is here on the left, and then you see how hard the shadow became here on the right, showing that our light did in fact get harder. Coming to her face, you can see the catch light is now this small, bright catch light. And you see the catch light here is this much larger, dimmer catch light. And if you look at the specular highlights on her skin here, they're slightly dimmer than what we get over here because the light got harder. So these are some common mistakes that I've made and have watched others make as well. That's why I'm telling you there are things to watch out for if you want to dial your images up. And I'm going to drop links to videos that I have about feathering, about light stands, and other things that will help you level up your images. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell to see more content just like this on Adorama TV. Because as you know, I'll say it one more time, there's levels to this.